Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the main show, the Trish Regan Show. I am Trish, one of our last shows from Ireland. It has been quite a whirlwind. Thank you for being here. Make sure you subscribe, share, do all that good stuff. Today, we got to get into just exactly what's going on with this whole media fantasy, because the media is obsessed with Kamala Harris and Tim Walz like I've never seen them obsessed with anybody before. I mean, I guess they figured they just have 3 months until November. Less than that now. And so they're trying to make the most of it. But they're actually failing. And I mean failing in just epic ways to do their job. And it's pretty darn concerning. I'm getting a little annoyed by it, as you might be able to tell. Anyway, the big sort of news of the moment is that Walz lied. But if you listen to the media, oh no, he just misspoke. He just got things a little confused, right? This is CNN talking about how Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, was bragging about all his military accolades when in fact he never even was actually in a combat zone, and somehow we're supposed to think he just misspoke. Watch.
And Eva, the Harris campaign now says that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz misspoke in that newly resurfaced video from 2018 in which he said he handled assault weapons in war. What more can you tell us?
Yeah, they're walking back those comments now, saying that that Governor Walz did misspeak, that he never was in active war, and they are just retreating on those remarks. This has been sort of an unforced error on his part, and we'll see how this continues to play out for him.
An unforced error. He just misspoke, okay? Nothing to see here. Let's move on. Except I'm not moving on. I'm not moving on because this is indicative of everything that's going on. And he misspoke in pretty epic ways. Let's just say he lied, okay? Because we're realists here and we call it what it is. Here he is back, a few years back, I should say, with what he actually said. I got a few of these clips to run.
Hello, everyone. I'm Congressman Tim Walz. It's a real honor to be able to pay tribute to the 34th Red Bull Infantry Division and to your families and friends as you prepare to deploy in support of Operation Iraqi Freedom. As a 24-year veteran of the National Guard and the Red Bull Division and a retired Command Sergeant Major, I'm especially proud of you.
Oops! You see, he wasn't actually a retired Sergeant Command Major. He kind of inflated that. Apparently he didn't bother with the coursework that would have given him that promotion. He just went with it anyway. I mean, is this not the lefty way or what? So there was one other little moment that is of concern that we recently uncovered. Mr. Walz saying that he was actually deployed overseas when in fact he was never actually in a combat zone. Here he is a few years back as a congressman from Minnesota talking about the need for mental health help for veterans. All good. The problem is what he says about himself. Listen.
And both of you, with your keen understanding of how this works, especially from National Guard families, I can tell you this, having been one of those that came back, we were in support of OEF, but sitting in there with OEF.
Okay, you got it. Having been one of those that came back, he's talking about the people over in Afghanistan, the veterans that were fighting in Afghanistan, none of which he was actually doing. So what exactly is this? Are you just misspeaking for decades and decades and nobody discovers until it just so happens that Kamala Harris decides to pick you, Mr. Walz, to be her VP? This is interesting. So one of his former military superiors went on CNN to do this little interview and he was speaking out. And notice how the anchor reacts. She shuts the whole thing down when he starts to say he didn't really appreciate the guy not joining the team overseas, instead declining and getting out of his service. Watch.
Is your concern that it's, go ahead, but I do want to ask this question quickly, Sergeant Major, and I appreciate your time. But is your concern about the manner in which he did not speak to you or his decision to retire, which he, as we've talked about, he would have been entitled to do? Which causes the most concern? Because that is the focus that so many people are wondering about, whether he has done something wrong in service or done something personally to offend you.
He did something wrong in service. As I stated before, he knew the policies and procedures and how we go to leadership and address issues or discuss issues and concerns out there. Again, backing up, he had told me, no, I'm going forward. We're going to go with the battalion and go from there. So I'm under the believing, he told me he was going forward. I'm underneath that believing that he's going forward. He went around me, which he should have addressed it with me so he could help do some things out there.
Sergeant Major, this was really... Excuse me, I don't want to cut you off, sir. Finish your point, please, Sergeant Major.
He went around me, and the fact is that there's possibility he probably realized I would have probably no, it's too late, you're going forward. Because we had already received our notification of sourcing. And there's one other little point out there that people say, well, he hadn't been notified yet. Yes, he had been notified. Now, there's another step out there. There's what's called stop loss. 90 days prior to the actual deployment, we received our orders. And at that time is what's called stop loss, where if you're in a position, you're going forward irregardless, unless there's some really major or process that gets you out from not going on the deployment itself. So there's that window of opportunity. And if people say we never knew he was going forward, yeah, he knew he was going forward. Had he gotten his orders yet? No, at that time he had not. As far as being a command sergeant major, he, as soon as he retired, or I'm going to go with the term retired, which he did, and he was eligible after 20 years to get a full retirement. He was taken out of the academy at that time. Here's another thing about...
Well, Sergeant Major, I do want to hear that I do want to hear what you have to say, Sergeant Major. I know I want to be sensitive of your time, and your audio is beginning to break up just a little bit, but I do want to thank people and give more information.
And you're done. And you're done. Look, I mean, I don't think that this is a narrative that the mainstream media wants to hear. I mean, you look at what's going on in the New York Times. I'm going to show that to you in just a second. And it's very obvious. There's only one point of view allowed. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. But first, a quick word from one of our sponsors. Hey, everyone. I'm Trish Regan, and so happy to be coming to you live all week long from the stunning island of Ireland. Just incredible. You know, when I was a little kid and we'd visit here, my mom would say, if you're lucky enough, you might actually get a pot of gold at the end of a rainbow, because that's where the leprechauns leave it. So we looked, we didn't find any, but I consider it probably having been good advice, because as I got older, I learned that gold is pretty valuable. It's valuable in terms of diversification. I encourage you to take a look at it, and when you do, call our friends, our wonderful sponsors over at American Hartford Gold. You can go to trishlovesgold.com, Trish loves gold, and wow, it's windy here. You can text 65532, my name, Trish, to 65532 for your chance to get up to $15,000 in free silver, ladies and gentlemen. Just a terrific offer. It was windy, right? Very, very windy. Well, the mainstream media, they are just all over Donald Trump in a negative, nasty way, to use his terminology. But yet they're glorifying Walz and Kamala at a really nauseating pace. I mean, for example, consider what we've just talked about in terms of Walz and, you know, dodging military service and all that good stuff. Well, here is the headline in the New York Times over the weekend. Walz in the National Guard, a steady rise, ending with a hard decision. Oh my goodness. Do I choose politics or do I go overseas and fight for my country? That was the really hard decision. In his military career, they write, Tim Walz achieved one of the highest enlisted ranks in the Army. Of course, not as high as he'd like you to think. Some peers took issue with the timing of his retirement. Yeah, because it was time to actually go and fight. And he chose not to. But do you see how they're sugarcoating this in the New York Times? You want to believe that they'd actually say something like that about Donald Trump? They wouldn't. We know that. And so it's really kind of nauseating. I mean, here's another example of this rampant media bias coming to us from every network and the New York Times. Take a peek here. Inside the worst 3 weeks of Donald Trump's campaign. That's the headline over the weekend in the New York Times. Lovely. People around the former presidency, a candidate knocked off his bearings, disoriented by his new contest with Kamala Harris, and unsure of how to take her on. I actually don't think that's true at all. I think that they knew all along that eventually if they could just paint the race as Trump versus Kamala, they'd win that. But you've got the media, you see, that literally actively participated in the takedown of a president that would be Joe Biden. I mean, they were right there, ready, willing, and able when David Plouffe and David Axelrod and Barack Obama cued them. Off they went, and they started attacking Biden. And they demoralized, if you would, the Democrat base. I mean, the Democrat base, who voted for the guy? Think about that. You actually were told, oh no, he's totally fine. Don't believe the crazy right-wing media that says maybe he's faltering, maybe he's not what he once was. They wanted you to think he was totally fine. They wanted him to get elected. And then someone set him up because they knew the poor guy couldn't actually string together a sentence that was cohesive for 2 minutes. He never could. I mean, granted, he's gotten a lot worse as of late, and we do think he's deteriorating massively. But, ladies and gentlemen, would you have taken him out like this? Here's another picture of poor Biden on the beach, over the weekend. Hanging out in Delaware, sleeping. Cozy look there, hanging out on the beach, sound asleep. I mean, we're all sort of sitting here going, who the heck is running the country? I mean, that's a real question. Because Kamala Harris, the vice president, who under normal circumstances would probably be put in charge of a nation, she's got a campaign to run, right? She's pretty busy. She's got to go out there and convince you that somehow she can actually speak, which she can't. She's got to convince you that she's got crowds, which she does not have. In fact, there's a whole thing circulating on Twitter right now questioning whether her crowds are even real, because if you look at certain reflections, etc., it suggests that maybe there might be a little bit of, shall we say, editing involved, kind of a no-no, kind of dishonest. But I'll tell you, I don't know if it's true or not, but it wouldn't surprise me one single bit, because I don't think there's a thread of honesty in these folks. I mean, you have only to look at who she chose for VP. He clearly is not a very honest guy. As for Kamala, she's got to somehow convince the American public that she can do the job. She's got to convince them she's not just Biden 2.0, which she is. Consider her economic policy non-existent. Maybe socialist, if there's anything there. Consider her border policy truly non-existent. In fact, she wouldn't even go to the border. Remember that? The border czar that wouldn't go to the border? She has nothing to offer except a bunch of social feel-good stuff. She's literally borrowing the same policies, going out to Vegas and giving a speech and saying, oh, I'm going to do the no tax on tips too. In other words, she has nothing of her own to offer. She only has a teleprompter speech that they wrote for her that she reads ad nauseum. I give Fox News some credit for putting this one together. Let's take a peek. Here she is reading the same speech in every single solitary place she goes, straight off a teleprompter.
It is good to be back in Pennsylvania. It really is good to be back in Wisconsin. It is so good to be back in Michigan. I am clear. The path to the White House runs right through this state. And listen, I am clear. The path to the White House runs right through this state. I took on perpetrators of all kinds. I took on perpetrators of all kinds. I took on perpetrators of all kinds. I know Donald Trump's type. I know Donald Trump's type. In this campaign, I proudly put my record against his any day of the week. In this campaign, I'll tell you, I will proudly put my record against his any day of the week. Are you ready to make your voices heard? Ready to make your voices heard? Are you ready to make your voices heard?
I know. And it goes on and on. I'm not going to play it all for you because it's actually really exhausting, but you get the point. In other words, somebody wrote her a speech. She practiced it ad nauseum. She gets up in front of a crowd. It's right there on the computer screen. You know what? No teleprompters here. Remember to subscribe, like, share. Careful what you say, because they can see it in all those comments on this side. Anyway, good to see so many familiar faces. But the reality is this. She can't actually speak at all. I mean, a few times she's tried, and what do we get? Word salad extraordinaire. Donald Trump noted this. He was speaking recently and made this observation. Hear what he has to say, and then hear from Kamala. The one and only time in this campaign thus far that she has spoken without a prompter.
Did you see her the other night? They put a camera in her face. She can't even talk. We just went through 4 years. Let's not go through another 4.
This is just an extraordinary testament to the importance of having a president who understands the power of diplomacy and understands the strength that rest in understanding the significance of diplomacy and strengthening alliances. This is an incredible day.
Honestly, where do we get these people? Really and truly, where do we get these people? She's going to be the first woman president of the United States, a woman who can't actually speak in a coherent sentence, a woman who has no real track record, who really hasn't been in politics very long. Normally, we consider that an asset, not in this particular case, okay, ladies and gentlemen, because she is absolutely unproven in terms of her chops. And by chops, I mean capabilities and policies. We don't know anything. I've looked and looked and looked. Here is her website. You're not going to find any policy on this website. No, Harris for President. It's all about donating. You can actually read her bio if you'd like, and then take action and donate. But there's no chance to actually hone in on the things that really matter. And so I'm left saying, really, who is she? I think we know deep down, right? The woman's from California and all that. And then she let this little teeny tiny thing slip. It's kind of significant. If you know anything about socialism, you understand the meaning of the word collective. Listen.
We believe in the collective. We're not falling for these folks who are trying to divide us, trying to separate us, trying to pull us apart. That's not where the strength lies.
No, she believes in the collective. And the collective would mean big, deep state, right? The government controlling everything for the benefit of the people, of course. Except it never really works out that way. I mean, think about it. We've had this happen over and over and over again throughout history. The most recent example being Venezuela right now, where they tried to convince people that socialism was really the best possible path forward. Well, I'm here to tell you it's not. It's absolutely, positively not. And I think that we've certainly been aware enough of everything that's happened and everything that's transpired all over the world to think that we ought to know better. But the Kamalas of the world, they want you to think differently. It's one of the reasons why I think this is important. I'm going to put up a URL here for you. This is from the Heritage Foundation. So the Heritage Foundation has come up with some really terrific policy ideas. And you know me. I'm like total policy wonk. I love this stuff. And I'm really impressed by what they're putting forward. All of this is information about how we can basically effectively have a more successful economy for all. So they talk a lot about making sure that we unleash American energy. They talk a lot about education. They talk a lot about securing the border. They talk a lot about not just border and energy, but also getting sort of deep state, if you would. And we've had a lot of that over the last 4 years, let's be honest. Getting them out of our lives so that we can be unleashed, right? To do what it is that we know how to do best. And yet they've gotten all this negative publicity about it. It's really crazy. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that scares the living daylights out of the left because it empowers the people. It gives more choice, more independence to the people. And so they can't allow that, right? So they've totally gone on this campaign to destroy it. And it's pretty sad. They're trying to say it's political, it's all Trump's. I'm going to tell you, I've known Heritage a long time. They're like, okay, who's got the best policy? Period. Okay, so this is not actually super duper political. This is not even Trump. I mean, hopefully, given that Trump is the GOP candidate, hopefully we would see these policies come to fruition. But for the left to attack them in such a aggressive, nasty, really uneducated way is unthinkable. But this is what they do. So I just wanted to throw this out there. Go to 25truth.com, 25truth.com. Take a look at it. It's awesome stuff. It's awesome policy. And for once, you know what? I'd like actually to see an election be based on some policy. We could use that. Not this guy, right, who sits on the beach and allows the likes of Barack Obama to be making the decisions. And I have a feeling, ladies and gentlemen, when you say who's running the country, that's exactly what's going on. So we need smart people back in charge, like now, okay? Now. I want to turn to some new polls that just came out. The New York Times is very, very proud of its new poll. Here we go. Kamala Harris takes the lead, they write, in 3 key states. Well, technically, this is a survey. There is some distinction between surveys and polls, blah, blah, blah. Anyway, they're all jazzed about this one, right? Because, again, they're trying to bring the other side down. They're trying to suck all the oxygen out of the room. They want to make sure that they deflate conservatives and their enthusiasm, and they want to deflate Trump. They're like, hey, we were deflated long enough, right? We had the lousy lousy candidate who couldn't talk. Well, neither can this one, Kamala Harris. She can't talk either, but that's neither here nor there because they keep her on the teleprompter. And apparently she stays to the teleprompter and she can read the teleprompter. And so they're looking at this saying, we're going to take Michigan, we're going to take Pennsylvania, we're going to take Wisconsin. And all I would say is caution to everyone. First of all, caution to the Trump team. Pay attention to this and focus on what really matters here because it's the policy. It's the policy, stupid. It's the economy. It's inflation. It is the border. This is the stuff that she's insanely weak on. This is the stuff that Donald Trump wins on. So he does need to lean into that and lean in hard. That is my advice du jour. I mean, you got her talking about the darn collective, thank you very much. She's socialism on steroids. We need to understand that. We need to exploit that, really. I mean, just from a sort of blocking and tackling perspective, if you would. That's my advice. In terms of these polls, well, a couple things. One, she's still going through the honeymoon period, let's face it. They were so down and out about Joe Biden. They'll take anyone. They will take anyone, which is how you may just get your first woman president, they're thinking, right? Because she's not actually electable. And if people are around her long enough, they definitely won't elect her. Because they'll get so darn sick of her, and the word salad gets a little grating after a while, along with the same expressions over and over again, and the same darn speeches. But in this case, what it's telling us is that some of those people that felt like they were kind of on the edge and they didn't really feel like going out and voting for Biden, they might vote for Harris. And so it's really important that Donald Trump double down right about now because I think there's still a chance. There's a huge chance. They want you to feel deflated. So don't feel deflated, okay? Subscribe, like, share, tell all your friends. You're not deflated. You're excited. You're excited because this actually presents a real opportunity for all of us to have a conversation about policy. And she's got none of it. She's got no policy other than some socialism stuff, some really weird social stuff, right? You know, she wants to actually charge you for every Tom, Dick, and Harry, Susan, Jill, and Sally to go to college like forever, maybe graduate, maybe not, get a degree in something that the United States may not need at all, right? And she wants you to pay for that. Think about that. And it gets worse. She wants you to pay for surgeries for people who identify as a different gender that are in prison. Like they're criminals, they're in prison, but they want the surgery. And that's fine with Kamala. She spoke about that recently. We've played it on the show. I mean, this woman is actually fairly dangerous, if you would, for society. And again, I'm going to play this and I'm going to keep on playing it all day long. Remember who she is, a socialist.
We believe in the collective. We're not falling for these folks who are trying to divide.
So she believes in the collective. Well, guess what, Kamala? We don't. As Americans, we just simply don't believe in the collective. We never will, okay? It's one of the reasons why I started 76 Research. It's really important, guys, to be focused on your finances. I encourage you to go there because we have model portfolios at 76research.com. Go check them out. Go check them out today because there's 10 to 15 stocks in each one of them. You got to get away from the socialism stuff because trust me, it's not going to be there for you. It just won't. I mean, maybe if you check certain boxes, etc., and you promise you'll vote for Kamala, she'll help you out. But overall, it's not going to be there. And so it's so critical at this moment in time. And I don't care. You know what? I get it. People say I don't have enough money, Trish. I can't put anything away. I hear you. Okay, it's hard. Yes, inflation is up. Big time. I mean, the groceries alone, right? I think the average grocery bill is up more than 30%. Everything has gotten more expensive, but all the more reason for you to take some ownership of your future. Start investing today. Go to 76research.com. Sign up for one of the model portfolios. We have 3 there, as well as the 76 report. You can go to 76report.com and start taking ownership, right? Because these people, they don't have your best interests. I mean, I don't need to sugarcoat this. I think you know that. That's just the reality. They're not going to help you. Why are you helping them? Take ownership. We keep talking about what's going on just south of the border in Venezuela, and I have a lot of contacts there, a lot of sources. It's really disturbing when you see how quickly a society can deteriorate. We've seen these pictures here of Russian warships that are coming into Venezuelan ports. None of this surprises me. In fact, about 1.5 years ago, I spoke with some sources on the ground there in Venezuela, in Caracas, who told me everywhere they went, they heard Russian. Everywhere they went. Listen, Venezuela is a shame. I mean, we should so have more of a presence there. We can't be allowing, for goodness sakes, Russia to be there. That could bubble up very quickly, very unexpectedly, into more of a problem. But you've got a civil war potentially that's going to break out there because you have a socialist that came in, totally clamped down. I mean, they're not allowing Twitter, they're not allowing freedom of information, etc., because what that freedom of information shows is that Nicolas Maduro did not actually win the election. In fact, Karina Machado has done a ton of due diligence on this. She has led the opposition, if you would, with Eduardo Gonzalez running effectively for her, because you see, Maduro wouldn't let her run. I mean, it sound familiar, right? I mean, it's kind of surreal, but when I talk about us increasingly looking like a banana republic, I'm just not kidding. And so it's one of the reasons why I just encourage everybody to be really, one, grateful for what we have, but also actively try to preserve it, right? You want to try to preserve all of the freedom and democracy and everything that exists within this great republic. So again, I do encourage you to invest on your own. Take a look at 76 Research. One of the things that we talk about in our basic income builder portfolio is actually gold. So you can go to trishlovesgold.com. You may have seen me in the hills of Ireland and the cliffs moments earlier talking about this. Listen, it's a wonderful diversification tool, something I think everybody should consider. The great news is that one of our wonderful sponsors here on the show, American Heart for Gold, has a terrific offer for you guys, up to $15,000 in free silver. Right now, silver's doing pretty well as well. If you call them or just text Trish, Trish, my name, to 65532. Text Trish to 65532. You can call them at 1-844-495-1115 or go to trishlovesgold.com. This is for your chance to get up to $15,000 in free silver. Look, there's a lot going on in our economy, in our markets. I anticipate that inflation is still going to come in strong and still come in really hot. And one of the reasons for that, ladies and gentlemen, is because they want to cut interest rates. You know, they probably should have done this a while back, but they waited. They waited because, well, they were worried about inflation, understandably. And the Fed is always kind of off. Like, that's just, as long as I've been reporting on the Fed, they're either too late or they're too early, and they always do too much after the fact, right? The timing is so wrong. And so in this case, they're expected to come in with a larger than normal interest rate cut in September, trying to kind of put some wind in the sails for Kamala Harris ahead of the November election. So with that in mind, it is kind of inflationary. I don't think this inflation is going away. I actually worry about stagflation, if you would. And that's sort of one of the big challenges ultimately we are going to be facing as a nation, this stagflation in terms of the 45 trillion in debt, right? 35 trillion, forgive me. You know, I'm accelerating. I'm thinking about all those interest payments. I'm looking at you guys because, again, I know this is so much on your mind, and it's like, where's the Tea Party when you need them? Oh, I guess Obama's IRS scared them out of existence. I don't know. Look, I think that this is going to be a pivotal election, and I think Donald Trump still has a really good shot at winning, but I think he's actually going to really buckle down and hone in on these policy issues. And all of his surrogates got to do the same thing. I mean, I get it. You get your red meat and you can go after her for checking different boxes and this, that, and the other. I agree. She never would win an election on her own. In fact, just look at how she fared in the New Hampshire primary. Nobody liked her. Okay, nobody liked her. But you can't be in a situation where she wins and we're stuck with the policy consequences, because those will be really bad for America. Trust me. We can't afford this kind of mistake in a moment like this. So focus, stay excited, keep watching me here. I'm back at home base on the other side of the pond, as we like to say. It's been a terrific time here in Ireland. I've gotten to reconnect with a lot of family members that I hadn't seen from the time I was around 6 years old. And I'm from a very, very small town. My family is anyway. They still speak Irish. It's one of what they call the Gaeltacht towns. It's in Ring, Ireland, in the southeast, and it's just magical. It really is. It was just such an incredible thing getting to see. We had like 34 Americans that came over, and all of our relatives here, and there's something really special about the tranquility and the simplicity of life here, and I envy it in many, many ways. I look forward to coming back, but I thank everyone here for this tremendous Irish hospitality. I kept saying, it's like everybody's so nice and so calm and so willing to help. We need a little bit more of that in the U.S. I know the South can be pretty good, but I'm from the Northeast, and things are a little bit more of a pressure cooker up there. I think this kind of culture and this genuine appreciation for people and respect for people is much, much needed right about now. I love that you're here. Please make sure that you subscribe. Please make sure you share. Keep the conversation going. And I'll see you tomorrow back in the US of A.